Hello, and welcome back to Bedtime Stories with Vice Vice Baby, where we will continue Ward number 6. Chapter 7. After seeing his friend out, Andrei Yefimych would sit down at the table and begin reading again. The stillness of the evening, and afterwards of the night, was not broken by a single sound, and it seemed as though time were standing still and brooding with the doctor over the book, and as though there were nothing in existence but the books and the lamp with the green shade. The doctor's coarse peasant-like face was gradually lightened up by a smile of delight and enthusiasm over the progress of the human intellect. "Oh, why is not man immortal?" he thought. "What is the good of the brain centers and convulsions? What is the good of sight, speech, self-consciousness, genius, if it is all destined to depart into the soil, and in the end to grow cold together with the earth's crust, and then for millions of years to fly with the earth round the sun with no meaning and no object? To do that, there was no need at all to draw man with his lofty, almost godlike intellect out of non-existence, and though in mockery, to turn him into clay. The transmutation of substance. But what cowardice to comfort oneself with that cheap substitute for immortality. The unconscious process that takes place in nature are lower even than the stupidity of man, since in stupidity there is, anyway, consciousness and will, while in those processes there is absolutely nothing. Only the coward who has more fear of death than dignity can comfort himself with the fact that his body will in time live again in the grass, in the stones, in the toad. To find one's immortality in the transmutation of substances is as strange as a prophecy, a brilliant future for the case after a precious violin has been broken and become useless. When the clock struck, Andrei Yefimych would sink back into his chair and close his eyes to think a little. And under the influence of the fine ideas of which he had been reading, he would unawares recall his past and his present. The past was hateful, better not to think of it, and it was the same in the present as in the past. He knew that the very time when his thoughts were floating together with the cooling earth around the sun, in the main building beside his abode, people were suffering in sickness and physical impurity. Someone perhaps could not sleep and was making war upon the insects. Someone was being infected by erysipelas, or moaning over too tight a bandage. Perhaps the patients were playing cards with the nurses and drinking vodka. According to the yearly return, 12,000 people had been deceived. The whole hospital rested as it had done 20 years ago on thieving, filth, scandals, gossip, on gross quackery, and as before, it was an immortal institution extremely injurious to the health of the inhabitants. He knew that Nikita knocked the patients about behind the barred windows of Ward number 6, and that Moiseika went about town every day begging alms. On the other hand, he knew very well that a magical change had been taking place in medicine during the last 25 years. When he was studying at the university, he had fancied that medicine would soon be overtaken by the fate of alchemy and metaphysics. But now when he was reading at night, the science of medicine touched him and excited his wonder, and even enthusiasm. What unexpected brilliance! What a revolution! Thanks to the antiseptic system, operations were performed such as the great Pirogov had considered impossible. Instead, ordinary Zemstvo doctors were venturing to perform the resection of the kneecap. Of abdominal operations, only 1% was fatal, while stones was considered such a trifle that they did not even write about it. A radical cure for syphilis had been discovered, and the theory of heredity, hypnotism, the discoveries of Pasteur and of Koch, hygiene based on statistics, and the work of Zemstvo doctors. Psychiatry, with its modern classifications of mental diseases, methods of diagnosis, and treatment, was a perfect Elbrus in comparison with that had been in the past. They no longer poured cold water on the heads of lunatics, nor put straight waistcoats upon them. They treated them with humanity, and even, so it was stated in the papers, got up balls and entertainments for them. Andrei Yefimych knew that, with modern taste and views, such an abomination as Ward Number 6 was possible only 150 miles from a railway in a little town where the mayor and all the city council were half-illiterate tradesmen who looked upon the doctor as an oracle who must be believed without any criticism, even if he had poured molten lead into their mouths. In any other place, the public and the newspaper would long ago have torn this little bastille to pieces. But after all, what of it? Andrei Yefimych would ask himself, opening his eyes. There is the antiseptic system, there's Koch, there is Pasteur, but the essential reality is not altered a bit. Ill health and mortality are still the same. They get up balls and entertainments for the mad, but still they don't let them go free. So it's all nonsense and vanity, and there is no difference in reality between the best Vienna clinic and my hospital. But depression and a feeling akin to envy prevented him from feeling indifferent. It must have been owing to exhaustion. His heavy head sank onto the book. He put his hands under his face to make it softer and thought, I serve in a pernicious institution and receive a salary from people whom I am deceiving. I am not honest, but then, I of myself am nothing. I am only part of an inevitable social evil. All local officials are pernicious and receive their salary for doing nothing. And so for my dishonesty, it is not I who am to blame, but the times. If I had been born 200 years later, I should have been different. When it struck 3, he would put out his lamp and go into his bedroom. He was not sleepy. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Bedtime Stories with Vice Vice Baby. I hope you have a good night and sweet dreams.